Hey guys, and welcome back to the Courageous Nerd YouTube channel for another interview. I'm Connor, and joining me today is actor Anthony Keyvan to chat all about his role as Rahim on the second season of Love Victor, now streaming on Hulu. If you enjoyed this interview or any of the others on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe. So welcome, Anthony, and thanks for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. And obviously, as at the time that we're recording this, I suppose people began to know you as Rahim on Love Victor. But I suppose, like, when did your journey in acting start? And that was always something you were interested in pursuing.
Yeah, since I was a kid, since I could talk basically, I was always like singing and dancing, performing, and my parents didn't really know what to do with that. They're pretty traditional, and they thought I was just gonna go and do sports like every other American boy, but I had other plans. So one day, my dad took me to the LA Auto Show because I've always loved cars, and we were approached by this person who was advertising their acting studio. Um, and she gave us the whole spiel, like, I can make your kid a star, like, come join my acting studio, like, we're gonna make him a star, blah 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 blah. And my parents at first were like, yeah, whatever, sure. But I pretty much like begged them for hours and hours on end until they finally enrolled me. And I was doing classes with them for a bit, and then eventually I auditioned and got a talent agent for commercial and print, and that's how I started in the industry. I started doing commercials. I started doing modeling for Target, Ross, T-Mobile, like things like that, catalogs, and then I transitioned into film and TV a few years later when I was about 8 or 9.
So you've definitely been doing this for a little while then, absolutely, from what it sounds like.
For pretty
Uh,
much my life.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like without having this conversation, I never would have known to that or have assumed that for sure. I suppose just kind of thinking of Love Victor, you've kind of stepped into a wider universe. There was already the film and the books, Love Simon and Becky Albertalli's novel, but like how like aware of it were you kind of going in, and were you a fan beforehand?
Yeah, I was a fan of the film Love Simon. I was a
Mm,
fan of Love Victor. I actually auditioned for season one before, and I've talked about that in other interviews.
mm.
But yeah, so I was familiar with the universe. I was familiar with the project. Yeah, and I was a big fan. And so being on the show in season two is definitely a little bit of a dream come true.
Mm. And I guess as like season two progresses, like Raheem, I would say becomes like more and more important to the storyline, because at first you kind of have like a, I mean, if I recall, like there's like the whole thing of Victor coming out and or in the background. I think that's the first time we see
Yeah.
Raheem, and you wouldn't guess at that point how important you'd be near the end of the season. So like, is that something you knew going in, or do you just think you were having like this like supporting part?
No, I had actually, when I got the call about the character going into casting and everything, they gave me pretty much a breakdown of what the character would entail, how many episodes they'd be a part of, and like the plot line for this character. So I knew going into it um, what it would mean playing Raheem.
Mm,
But that was just their way of kind of, because they only wanted to bring me in for the latter half of the season. Uh,
right. Yeah.
they needed a way to like introduce me so that it wasn't such a shock on episode 6 when I started off the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose then, kind of on that note, that like the actor who would get the part would have to have good chemistry with Michael Camino and Isabella Ferreira, just because of like the close connection to their characters. So like, were they at all involved in your audition process, or did they kind of take a chance by like casting you and hoping it worked out?
Yeah, they actually didn't have any chemistry reads
Oh,
whatsoever, which is pretty rare.
yeah.
Because every time I've auditioned and tested for larger parts, that would be in like more than one episode, or that would be with like an ensemble with the rest of the cast. They usually have a chemistry read where
Mm,
they work the material with the other actors to see how they work together and how they look on camera together. but they didn't do that with me. But I feel like they probably made that decision because the creative team, the producers, the network, they all knew me before I had done a pilot for Hulu prior, and I already
Mm.
auditioned and tested for the series in season one. So I feel like they were already familiar with me and that they didn't need to do that. But yeah, you're right. It is pretty rare that that doesn't happen. Yeah, they really took a chance on me, and it couldn't have worked out better because we're all like really good friends now.
Yeah, I mean, I know you mentioned that you said in other interviews you'd auditioned before. Like, did you say like what the part was that you went out for, or are you keeping that kind of under wraps?
No, I've talked about it before. I had tested against Michael for the role of Victor.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, but I'm assuming I didn't get it because I'm not
right.
Latinx, which is I think a good decision on everyone's part. I was kind of nervous about going out for the role for that reason, which is why I'm so happy that they found a part for me that I can play authentically.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I suppose, like as you've been saying, that whatever you were doing in that initial audition process, maybe you're kind of that stuck in their head, and which is why you came up then for Rahim down the line.
Hopefully, who knows? I don't know. I really don't
Yeah.
know. But I'm just guessing that I mean they really I only sent one tape in and then they made their decision.
Yeah, and I suppose just on a different note, like outside of the writers, you're probably the next best person in terms of tapping into like Raheem's mindset, because I think initially the whole idea that Pilar had of bringing him and Victor even together was that they both kind of had the like shared similar experience of coming out. So like, how much do you think like Raheem needed that relatability with someone else?
I think a lot, and I think Victor needed that relatability as well. That's something that he
Mm,
didn't really have with Benji. Benji coming from a white upper class family, fairly supportive. He couldn't really understand or grasp the severity of the situation that Victor was going through
yeah.
with his parents. Whereas Rahim knew exactly right off the bat um, how Victor was feeling and how, he could relate to that because he was going through it himself.
Yeah, and just kind of thinking, because obviously you mentioned being familiar with like the wider universe, but like an observation that I made is that I think a lot of the season one characters are kind of like reflections of characters from like Love, Simon or the novel. Like obviously Simon and Victor's a pretty obvious one, but also Catherine Langford's character Leah and Mia. I think you can kind of pair off, and then Blue and Benji. But I suppose like for you, like coming in, like I don't think Raheem really has like a counterpart in Love, Simon or the novel. So like were you kind of thinking about where Raheem would fit when you first like joined the show?
I didn't really think of that. I just knew that the writing team is amazing at their jobs and they know what they're doing, and
Mm,
I I found it really refreshing that they were looking for another perspective of someone from a different cultural background in coming out, because it's not just Latino people coming out, it's not just white people coming out, it's people all over the world,
mm.
and the more representation that we have, the better, I feel like. So no, I didn't really think about not being an original or
Well,
being
yeah,
a reference to another character or another person in the universe. I think this was just their way, the Love Victor team's way of shedding light to another person, another cultural background, and their version of coming out.
yeah. And actually, like in the past, I've spoken to like some of your co-stars. I've spoken to BB Wood and Anthony Turpel, and like both of them have kind of talked about just because there's so many different storylines going on of people they don't really get to work with as much. So, like assuming the show, and again, assuming the show continues based on how season two ended, and assuming Raheem is also coming back, like who would you want to work with more that you didn't get to as much in season two?
I would love to have scenes with, Rachel Hilson, who plays Mia,
Mm,
and and Mason Gooding, who plays Andrew, and BB, because I didn't really get to work with any of them throughout the season. We would see each other after work, or like we would have scenes filming on the same day but at different times. So like we would
Mm.
see each other at work and we would hang out after work, but I never got to really work with them. And I think they're all extremely talented actors. And I think it would be really fun to kind of play off of them and figure out a dynamic on screen with them.
Yeah, I mean that's a really like interesting distinction, and maybe like it depends on like the individual actor. But if you were in a project with someone but never like directed any scenes with them, like would you say that you like worked with them, or would you just say that, oh yeah, we happen to have been on the same project? I mean,
I
it
would
probably
say,
depends on individual opinion, right?
yeah, no, I understand that. But for me, I guess I would say that I worked with them because at the end
Mm.
of the day, we all contributed something to this project for an end goal, and it was a collaborative experience. So I would say, yeah, they're my coworkers. I work with them, I work alongside them. We might not work together all the time, but we have a collective end goal.
Yeah, I mean, just like, you can kind of relate that to any company. There's people who do different jobs, might never have met each other, but, the big boss is the same person for both of those people. So I think, I mean, just kind of relating that to like a mundane setting for sure. Um, and I think obviously also, again, when Rahim was introduced, he kind of referenced his friendship with Pilar, and like Pilar kind of telling him about Victor. But like, how do you think like Rahim was reacting and thinking when he was being told all of this, or at least what Pilar knew? I'm not sure myself exactly how much she knew, but like, how do you think he took that in when he was first told all that?
I don't think I understood the question.
Oh yeah, so when Rahim was like first introduced, obviously it was through Pilar, and he like mentioned that Pilar told him everything that had happened to Victor. Like I mentioned, I wasn't sure how much she personally knew, so then that would affect how much Rahim knew. But like, how do you think he was reacting to that like information? I mean, basically, what happened to Victor in season one, you would have heard about to an extent.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I feel like the way that Raheem has been explained to me is that he's always been a student at Creekwood. He's just never been
Mm,
introduced before. So I'm guessing that, Raheem knew, what was going on about Victor, even though he hadn't come out to the whole school yet, um, because of Pilar. We had worked together in the summer. This was all,
mm,
said,
yeah.
but shown. We had worked together in the summer at the pretzel stand. So I'm guessing that, Pilar probably confided in him about things that were going on with Victor. And after that, episode 2, where he came out to the whole school, he probably felt like, okay, now is the time I can ask Victor for advice. I feel like I hope I answered your question well enough.
Yeah, no, no, you're bang on with what I was going for. And sorry if it was convoluted, but yeah, I mean, you got the gist of what I was going for. So absolutely. And I suppose then, yeah, to your point, a bit like what we were saying earlier, how you were just kind of like standing there in the background, like there's no knowing what Raheem could have witnessed before we knew who Raheem was. So I wonder if that could come into play later, like of what he could have like walked past or observed like way in the
Or,
past.
on Creek Secrets or
Mm.
her, yeah, it's all for the audience interpretation, I guess. But that's where I would put it.
Yeah, and obviously, like just addressing anyone who might be listening to this who hasn't seen the whole season, I'd advise like skipping ahead, and I'm about to ask this next question. But I suppose like once you had filmed everything, what were you most looking forward for people to see and react to?
What was I most looking forward to seeing?
Like for people to see and kind of like experience, like scene wise or anything like that.
Yeah, I was most looking forward to seeing, the reaction to LGBTQ people in the Muslim community. I
Mm,
was excited to see, because I'm really one of or Rahim is really one of the first Muslim Iranian LGBTQIA plus characters on a major network. So I was excited to kind of be one of the first and to get to see how people would react to having someone like that kind of
mm,
representation on screen. And I was also excited, for the fans to like meet Rahim and hopefully love him. It's a little bit mixed reviews right now, but
Yeah.
yeah, I was just excited for it to be out there and for people to, take something from it.
Mm. And I think the show has done a great job as well in that Rahim, even though like he opposes what that fans were familiar with, I wouldn't necessarily call him a villain either, because I know for me, before I started watching, I saw a tweet of like someone being like, "Oh, Rahim, like how good." So I was waiting for him to do like the really horrible thing that made that person have that reaction. But I think there must probably have just been a big Victor Benji shipper. But yeah, it's great writing because no one is like a bad guy. It's just they're opposing what each other wants. But I mean, what's your opinion on that?
My opinion on what exactly?
On like because like Benji's perspective, Rahim is this guy like coming in and like or maybe almost trying to take Victor, but I wouldn't necessarily say that Rahim is being malevolent or like deliberately trying to sabotage a relationship. But like, I mean, yeah, I mean, just
I think I understand now.
yeah,
I guess where I lie on this is at the end of the day, Raheem really just wanted to be a support system for Victor and
mm,
that he could feel comfortable enough to confide in because that's what really Victor was for Raheem. So it was kind of like this unspoken, like symbiotic relationship where they both like lean on each other for things. And because of that, Raheem caught feelings, and that's not something that anyone can control,
no,
and Raheem was honest about his feelings and that he didn't want to get in between him and Benji, but he did, but it wasn't intentional. And that this is, at the end of the finale, he gave him the kiss and he said, if you want the same thing I do, where I live. At the end of the day, like Raheem just gave Victor a choice, and it wasn't like an ultimatum or anything. And I I feel like Benji does have reason to be upset. Some things were said that shouldn't have been. But at the end of the day, I don't think Raheem is a villain. I think he's just a kid who had feelings and was honest about them. And I don't think it's fair that people are saying that Raheem is like a home wrecker because he didn't
mm,
try to be a home wrecker.
no, exactly. He didn't at all. Because I think again that's a great thing of the writing that I don't think people would have had the strong opinion of like, oh, go for Benji or go for Raheem. There's like a strong case for either one. So it makes, I guess, all the more interesting that cliffhanger because I don't think it's easy to predict what Victor could have gone for. I think he could have gone either way.
And that's I think that was the point.
Yeah,
And I wish I could tell you who it was, but I really don't know.
yeah. I've seen plenty of like theories of predicting, but I think that's a whole other can of worms that's probably best avoided at this point. It's probably too soon to
Yeah.
try and open that up. But I suppose that other than Love Victor, are there any other projects we're able to discuss at this time?
None that I'm working on currently, but I am also on this other show called Generation on HBO
Mm.
Max, and I had a couple episodes on that, and season one, part one is already out, and season one, part two, which I also have another episode in that, is coming out on the 17th. So I think that's kind of it for me.
Yeah, and obviously, best of luck with that and with the Love Victor going forward. And I suppose, like just to round off, like the pre-prepared questions I had, like what would you want to say to fans of Love Victor based on what you've seen so far that they've been saying online?
Thank you. I want to
Hmm.
say thank you for your love and your support and your interest in the show because like we have some really diehard fans and that's really something special. Like people who are, tweeting and waiting at midnight for the show to drop, like those people I'm just really grateful for. And thank you for welcoming me and taking me in as part of the Love Victor family. So I guess I just wanted to say thank you.
Absolutely, and once again, like best of luck going forward. I assume if the show comes back, just based on how it ended, you'll probably be back. So I can say like, best of luck with the show going forward and with your other projects. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. All the best and take care. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too. It's been great talking to you.